All right, so if you clicked on this video, there's a good chance you've seen people like this all over Instagram, all over TikTok, and you're asking yourself, why don't I look like these guys? How can I look like these guys? And how did they get started on social media? Well, if you're asking yourself these questions, you're in the right place. I went from this to this in just a few years. And honestly, for the majority of the time I've spent lifting, I wasn't even prioritizing the things I'm gonna go over in this video. So stay tuned, I'm here to help. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is analyze your body, okay? You might be skinny fat, you might be fat or skinny. No matter what, everyone's end goal will be different. The good news is we're all gonna look crazy, right? Because everyone's got their own genetics, everyone has their own bone structure, so no one can really look like you. That is something that you have going for you, so don't let that discourage you. No one else can ever look the exact same way as you, and that is what sets you apart from everyone else. So yes, this may be bad news for some people that want to look like Michael B. Jordan, like me. I really started getting into lifting when I saw Creed, and yeah, unfortunately, majority of us don't have the same exact bone structure, don't have the same genetics as him, so we just can't. It's impossible. Could we build the exact same proportions, same arm size, same chest size? Probably, but what are the chances that it actually looks exactly like him? Fairly low. All right, so before I get into the 3 body types, I wanna say this. No matter what, you're gonna have to put effort in, a lot of effort. You're gonna need to be weightlifting, you're gonna need to be incorporating compound lifts, and a little bit of cardio. So now that I've said that, let's get into it. If you're skinny fat, which I used to be, at least I would consider myself skinny fat, I would recommend first leaning out just a little bit. So that way you don't have a gut going into the bulk, because I will recommend that whether you're skinny fat or skinny, that you do start bulking, because when you're already at a genetic disadvantage due to not having mass, you're gonna wanna start putting on mass as soon as you can. And the way to do that is by bulking. And yes, you are going to gain some fat, and that is why I recommend all my skinny fat guys to lose a little bit of the gut first, and you can do this through cardio and a calorie deficit. I wouldn't recommend doing this for too long. I would just slim out a little bit. I would say probably give yourself a couple weeks, and you'd be surprised if you stay consistent and you stay on a structured diet, that will actually be one of the easiest things that you do. So here I am with a little bit of a gut, okay? And then this is after I leaned out. So I think I probably lost like 3 to 5 pounds, because muscle does weigh more than fat, and you will be replacing some of that fat with muscle in the beginning, especially if you're a beginner. You can easily recomp, but it does get harder the further you are into your lifting career, so don't rely on that. So now that you've got a pretty decent starting physique, again, you're gonna wanna bulk. And the way you're gonna wanna do that is by going into a caloric surplus. The easiest way to figure out how much you need to eat is to track your calories. This is something I recommend if you don't know what you're doing with diet, and it's really not as hard as people make it seem. Step 1, look up a macro calculator. This is gonna ask you a few questions regarding height, weight, activity level, gender. You're gonna fill out these answers, and then it's gonna give you a certain calorie goal to hit depending on your goal. So whether or not you're maintaining, you're losing, or you're gaining. You're gonna wanna stick to that calorie goal as much as you can. And if it's not working in the beginning, then maybe raise it a little bit. This is where you need to kind of learn your body. That I cannot do that for you through YouTube. But don't worry, I promise you, it gets easier as you go. And like I mentioned earlier, for my skinny people, you're gonna wanna do the same thing. I want you to start bulking, okay? Now, that doesn't mean go into a dirty bulk. That means to increase your calories and to make sure that you are lifting with intensity and trying to get into a progressive overload with weights. So essentially, progressive overload is progressively upping the weight for each exercise you do to ensure muscle growth and muscle fiber repair, because that is how we build muscle. We have to break down the tissue so that way it can repair itself. Now, let's say you're on the fatter side. I recommend immediately getting into strength training. Do not worry about losing weight right now. This is something I wish I could tell everybody that considers themselves overweight and wants to get lean quick. Make sure that you take advantage of the fact that you have mass naturally, okay? Think about it like this. If I were to stick my 130-pound skinny fat self versus someone who's 200 pounds and considered overweight and put them in front of the same bench, who's gonna lift more? Most likely the 200-pound guy, due to the fact that he has mass. And a lot of people say mass doesn't move mass, but in some scenarios, it can help. So take advantage of the fact that you can get stronger quicker than somebody who is on the skinny fat or the skinny side. That is why I would recommend that you first maintain for at least a month and just start by doing strength training. So that's the 3 compounds: squatting, benching, and deadlifting. Now, when it comes to deadlifting, that's sort of a touchy subject. I recommend you do your own research as to whether or not that does help with muscle growth or not. I personally do not touch deadlifts anymore. I used to do it a lot, but my back is starting to hurt from it. And honestly, there are plenty of other exercises you can do to substitute deadlifts. But I do think that benching and squatting would be great to start with. Okay, so now generally, this is what I think everyone should do. Figure out a split. And the split that I personally recommend anyone who's new to the gym is going to be push-pull legs. There are still plenty of experienced lifters that still use a split for the purpose of simplicity. But in terms of what's optimal for muscle growth, this is the most optimal. Every single movement that you do on these days are all intertwined together as they work the same muscles. So push is going to be chest, triceps, and shoulders. So for example, the bench press, that's going to utilize your triceps, your shoulders, and your chest. That is why they break up these days into these certain muscle groups, because a lot of these movements end up working the same muscles that you're training that day. So that just optimizes your muscle growth. The next day is going to be pull. This is going to be back, biceps, and rear delts. For example, when you're doing a cable row, you're also working your biceps and a little bit of your rear delts. That's just one example, but that is why they recommend you do all those muscle groups on the same day as well. And the third day is going to be legs. And that's pretty self-explanatory. You can break that up by muscle group, like for example, maybe quad day for the first leg day, and then hamstring day for the second leg day of the week. It's up to you. I'm personally not the biggest advocate for leg day. I just personally don't like it. So if you want more leg information, I may not be the guy for you. However, I don't recommend skipping it. You don't want to be that guy in the gym who just has chicken legs and just an absolutely built upper body. So definitely try to make sure that you're hitting legs. Now, what you're gonna need is a diet. Like I said, this is kind of where you're gonna learn your own body. Certain foods just agree with people better than other people. For example, maybe you're lactose intolerant. That kind of cuts out a few food groups that would be helpful for other people, right? If cheese doesn't really work well for you, then you'll have to find other options. For me, I don't have any problems with dairy, thankfully, but for some people it really is an issue. And this is, again, where you need to know your body and learn about it as you go. And I promise you, again, it's not as intimidating as it seems. You just gotta trust the process. Just for reference, I'm gonna put up a picture right here. These are gonna be recommended lean bulking diets. These are gonna be some foods that you can eat from each macro. So that's gonna be your carbs, your proteins, your fats. And those are gonna be 3 groups that you're gonna really wanna make sure that you hit properly. All right, y'all, so I've been editing the video and I realized that I forgot to add a cutting part where you end up losing the weight. So I figured I would just go ahead and add that in now. So obviously what comes after a bulk is a cut. Make sure firstly that you bulked for around 6 months. You want to make sure that you've given your body enough time to build the muscle that you want, to get that size that you're looking for. And I would even say once you're at a size you're comfortable with, push a little further, because you have to remember when you're cutting, you are going to lose mass. You don't want to get too comfortable in that bulk and assume that when you cut, you're going to have the same size. You just won't. It's not possible. Unless, of course, you're, not natural. But I'm talking about as a natural bodybuilder, it's really difficult, okay? I don't know if someone can do it. Leave a comment, teach me. I would love to know. But from what I've been told and from my experience, you just won't keep all that mass. So my recommendation would be to bulk a little bit further just to get the extra size on. So that way, once you cut, you're maybe closer to that ideal size that you had while you were bulking. The way you're gonna wanna cut is you're gonna wanna be in a slight caloric deficit. And you can use that website. It'll tell you how many calories you wanna be eating per week. So that way you can be losing about 0.5 to 1 pound a week. And you don't wanna go past that, because if you lose weight too quick, you'll wind up losing muscle with that fat. That was a mistake I made. I think I was losing about 2 pounds a week. My cut was not long, maybe a month long. You want to aim for about 2 to 3 months at the absolute latest. If you're doing 3 months, that's probably a big weight loss. You don't want to do too much. And another thing that I want to recommend to you guys is to not stay shredded too long. I wouldn't recommend maintaining that because it's hard. It's not really healthy to be so lean like that. I'll tell you from my experience being this lean, and I'd be posing and it would hurt. Like I would be twitching, like my face would twitch, my muscles were twitching. I just was not able to maintain that healthily. So my recommendation is don't stay shredded for too long. If you have to, put on a little extra fat just so that you can maintain being leaner rather than shredded, because there is a difference. Another thing that can help, but I cannot assure you will, is supplements. Personally, I like to use protein powder as a supplement because getting in a lot of protein every day can be a task. Protein shakes can help. So this is, for example, one protein flavor that I use. This is from Rise Supplements. It is called Chocolate Cookie Blast. When it comes to protein powders, what I really recommend is finding one that you can stomach, because some powders are just not made the same as others. Rise has some flavors that I really like. They're easy to digest. I personally just use water. That's how good I think they are. So if you want to try it, you can use code SHAW, which will get you 15% off. It truly does not matter what your preference is. Just make sure you like the flavors. That way you can keep drinking it and not throw up. Now, I'm not saying you have to get that brand. You don't have to use my code. I'm just simply putting it out there that this brand particularly has flavors that I stomach very well. Never had any digestive issues, so that is the only brand that I personally can feel okay with promoting to you guys, just because I use it personally, and I have been for years. Another supplement that I recommend is pre-workout. Now, this is again from the same brand, and the reason I like this so much is because it tastes like Kool-Aid. I talked about that in some other videos. We do have Kool-Aid flavors. I personally like this one. It's the tropical punch flavor. Now, the reason I recommend pre-workout to anybody who lifts or is just getting started in the gym is because it provides you with energy that keeps you going during your lifts so you don't get too tired. There's also got some other things in there that help with getting you a better pump, which is essentially when your muscles are temporarily bigger from blood flow, and for focus in general. So again, you can use code SHAW to try out this flavor, which is I have Kool-Aid here. This is personally my favorite. But again, pre-workout's one of those things where you got to try a bunch, find which one you like the best, which makes you feel the best, and which digests the best for you. All right, guys, I hope you learned something from this video. Again, this was geared towards more beginners that are just trying to get into the gym and sort of structure what they're doing. The next video will be how to get started on social media. I use some of these tips to get to where I'm at, so if that sounds interesting, then you'll have to wait till part 2. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.